ego, ego, ego. A lot of people think and say that this guy must die. This guy must come to an end. In order for you to complete the ascension process, people say the ego must die. Okay. Now, in order for us to get into what would actually need to be resolved and extracted from even that statement, we have to deal with, just like everything else, what is this? What is the ego? All right. Now, most people think it's just saying something like, oh, okay, I have a sense of self. Okay. When we get into ego, the first person we have to go to is a man named Sigmund Freud. Okay, so Sigmund Freud is where they get all of the psychological aspects of ego from, specifically, which he would have been saying it as a German statement rather than just a Latin or an English statement, but it became that over time. So you had das Es, okay, das Es, das Ich, das Uber Ich, okay, or it would have been just das Es, das Ich, okay, or say das Es, Ich, Uber Ich, okay, but what would it say? It's saying Es. Das is saying that, how we say the. Okay, so das, that, which is the S, okay? And then you have ache. And now I want to say something about this ache thing because I haven't myself fully studied the language of Germany, okay, or German. So I know that this here, right, this is a matter of discussion because that ich isn't really pronounced that way. They say it's more like a hissing sound that's made with the back of the tongue, kind of. So I know, but there are some groups of people, okay, that do pronounce it that way in Germany, or certain Germans do pronounce it as ich, but there is. So if you want to go and look at it, I think that'll be something interesting for y'all to look into, the actual pronunciation of the ich that I'm using there, okay? Well, as for now, you have das es, you have das ich, and then you have uber, ich, okay? And this is where you get the it or that it, okay? So let's say that or the it, it, the it, the I, okay, I don't want to confuse y'all by spelling it how I spell it, so I'm going to spell it that way. The it, the I, and then over I is saying over I, meaning the I that is beyond I, okay? So those are the first parts of it. And that's broken down into or explained later into, I said, this was German. I think this was that would be the English translation of it. And then eventually, okay, the reason why people are saying how they saying it now, the id, the ego, and the super ego, I think it's because they translated what Sigmund Freud was presenting from German to Latin. And that became the id, the ego, and the super ego. So you have id, and id is another way of saying it, all right? And then you have the ego, and ego was another way of saying I, okay? I'm spelling it that way because I don't want to confuse you. So I, or you'll say myself, I myself, okay? Or I myself as in like a whole complete phrase. So I myself. Well, I guess that would have been the proper way to say it anyway. Okay, so either I or myself or I myself. Okay, so ego, I myself, it is it. And then you have what's called that super ego. And remember that word super means beyond. Okay, and then ego is saying yourself. All right, I myself. So that would be the beyond self, or yeah, we could just call it that, the beyond I. All right, beyond me or beyond I. Okay, so you have id, ego, super ego. All right, you have s, ik, obit, ik, and then you have the that is the it or the it, the I, and the over I. Okay, so these were all parts of what they were saying the human psyche altogether, meaning the components of the human psyche or the components of the human brain. Remember what the psyche word meant. Okay, so you have psychology, and psychology was saying the study of the psyche. Okay, and the psyche was the what? The mind. As some people go, we went over that. It's really the brain, right? And all this ties into the brain. Okay, but if you were just saying it how they said it, the mind, the spirit, and also what? The soul. Okay, meaning literally this word right here means mind, spirit, and soul, or mind, or spirit, or soul, depending on whichever context you'll be using it in. So they were studying the mind or the soul, but what they were actually studying was the brain. Okay, and not just the brain, the entire nervous system, the central nervous system, the peripheral nervous system, everything that came with that, that made up the brain, and specifically the brain's parts and functions. Okay, so if we were to break the id, the ego down, and the super ego down into three parts, we could draw a brain. Okay, so let's say this is the brain, which if you really study the brain, it looks a lot like a speech bubble. Interestingly enough, and we can get into that maybe another time. All right, or the utterance of that which became thought. All right, or that which became what we see as our material brain. All right, so you see this spoken word looking image, okay, or chat bubble or speech bubble. This, let's say this is the brain. We have the stem, and then you have the parts in front of it, okay, that make up what you call your brain. If we were to break this down into three different parts, these three main parts would be what Sigmund Freud was trying to explain about. Okay. Now we've gone over the reptilian brain and the limbic system and the frontal lobe. So y'all kind of got an introduction to that on an elementary level. So let's look at it from how they were speaking on it in terms of psychology. So what we'll call this, it is not necessarily how they said it, okay, but we'll call this part backward thinking. Okay. You have backward thinking. All right, you see that's in the back of the brain. This is the front, by the way, frontal lobe. Remember that, front, facing forward. Okay, you have backward thinking, and then you have central thinking, and I'm explaining what each of those mean. All right, and then you have forward thinking. Now, when you say to somebody that they're forward thinking, or you're speaking of a forward thinking person, usually that person uses rationale and reason. They're a critical thinker. They analyze things. They think before they make motions, and they always have a plan in action. And they have a sense of longevity as opposed to just what's going to happen right now and all this other stuff and things that they feel like, and whether or not they're going to respond to something just because they feel like responding to it, things like that. No, the forward thinker is in a better seat to assess whatever situation they're presented with. And when they're presented with that situation, their thing is to what? Move forward. And you don't want to do things that will cause for unfavorable outcomes, because then you won't be able to move forward. That's how the forward thinker thinks. So when you're using forward thinking, that's literally the activation of that elite lobe, or that boss lobe, or that powerhouse lobe, which is the frontal lobe right here. Okay, so this is, again, all of these are broken down into different pieces. This is the ego. All right. The ego is there for that. And we'll get into the ego's relationship with different parts too. So there's one aspect of the ego right there, the frontal lobe, and its protection of you. You, the person that's experiencing this reality. Your ego, one of your egos, or a type of ego, protects you from just making any kind of decision, crashing out, all of that. Okay, it's the frontal lobe self. So ego is that I again, all right, or that self again. And this part of that self prevents you from making errors or mistakes. And the more you activate that ego, the less mistakes you'll make, the less unfavorable outcomes you'll yield for yourself. So we wouldn't want to kill this ego, would we? Now, I'm not saying that all ego would need to stay around. Certain egos may need to be silent. Certain egos may need to be shut down. Certain egos may need to be brought to the forefront. Okay, you just have to know that when you're saying ego, you're not saying one word. You're not speaking of a science or a study of something where they talked about one thing or one branch or aspect or a piece of a thing. They spoke of an all-encompassing idea. And human beings that want to speak on ego definitely want to look into where it came from. So I would encourage all of y'all to study Sigmund Freud's works. Okay, study psychology itself, and that'll help you get a better grasp on ego. I heard somebody was speaking in terms of ego, saying it was supreme ego, right? They were talking about they were going to take it to a whole different level beyond what people were used to, but all they ended up speaking on is psychology. I said, well, you might as well tell your students to study psychology. I'm not seeing anything spiritual or beyond what they've already spoken about. If you're able to step forward with different what they call disciplines or fields of science, that's a whole different thing. But if you're just going to talk about what these other people speak about, and then they make statements like the Caucasians are less than and all this other stuff, and they're not supreme beings, but y'all repeating everything that the Caucasians have taught. So again, not that's not my thing. That's their thing. My thing is let's deal with the science. I don't care who brings it. Mongoloid, Caucasoid, Negroid. Let's deal with the science. And if the science works and it's applicable, okay, well then we'll keep it. And if not, then we'll leave it be. Okay, and it just may not apply at that point in time. Also, it doesn't mean that we're going to just disqualify the science altogether. We may walk back around and have to use that science again eventually, but we're not going to just disqualify it, especially not because of somebody's race. All right, so we're also not going to confuse ourselves to think that we become supreme beings by regurgitating and repeating a race of beings that we say are less than us. Yet we don't have sciences of our own to present. So I encourage people, go and study these fields because ain't nothing else out here that people done put out anyway. And every word that we're using, all the English words, all the terminology, everything already belongs out here. So if you want to jump the line of this ascension process, go straight to the science. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Don't idolize anybody. Go straight to the sciences, and then you'll see how to apply these things for yourself. And psychology is something that you can definitely apply for yourself in real time, just like most, if not all, sciences that they have out there. You are able to apply it. You're able to test it. You're able to assess yourself and look at yourself and see where do I fit in this field, okay? And what parts of myself am I activating from accessing this field? So study the ego and you'll see there's different branches. So this part right here is specifically called ego, and now you know that means what? I, okay? I or I myself. All right. So you know what the word means. And this is one of the aspects in how it's been used. So you have forward thinking. Okay. I want to jump back here to, it's like you can say this is like a counterpart of it, because you're saying forward thinking and backward thinking. All right. And then we'll get to the central part. So forward thinking, backward thinking. The backward thinking will be what you call the id. All right. Remember, the id is like it. Okay. So when I say id, you think impulse. When I say the id, you think instinctual. Okay, why am I saying impulse, instinctual? First of all, because they start with that letter I. Okay, that'll be easier for you to remember. So anytime you think of id, you think impulse. All right, and if you want to remember impulse, impulse is saying, remember pulse. A pulse is something that's quick. And impulse is like I am pulse. I am pulse. If I am pulse, then I'm taking on the version of myself that's working off of things that just happen right then and there. I'm not putting much thought into it. Impulsive. If somebody's an impulsive shopper, then they see everything they want and they just grab it just because it's there and just because they want it. That's an impulsive shopper. They'll run your cart up because they're only thinking about right then and there. All right. Now, that may not always be a bad thing. The instinctual self needs to activate when you're in danger. The instinctual self needs to activate when you're experiencing some type of stimulus in your environment, okay, that requires immediate attention. So don't demonize or venerate any one part of this system, okay? You just understand the three different parts. So you'll know how to work with that conglomerate. Okay, so we got ID, okay, impulse, impulse, instinct. Okay, so you put instinctual. And humans have instincts. That doesn't make them bad. Okay, humans are a certain type of animal. You exist within the animal kingdom. You're just more elevated or evolved, okay, according to what they say. So if you remember that, all right, you'll have impulse and instinct. That's the backward thinking, though. The reason why I'm saying backward thinking is because when you're here, you are going backwards to what we talked about the other day, the reptilian nature of yourself, the amphibian nature of yourself, the simple, what do we call it, the amphibian, reptilian, mammalian nature of yourself alone, without the evolution in mind. Okay, so whichever one of those you're stuck on functioning from at that time, it just becomes about survival. And especially if you operate that space continuously, okay, what'll happen is you will regress. And most people exist here because they think this is a real thing. ID. Look at the word id, ID. What's your ID? Okay, let me see your ID. Okay, show me your ID. And it all becomes instinct, instinct, instinct. Survive, 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 survive without thinking about that which allows for that to take place, especially in today's reality. Okay, well, you're not faced with the same things that people may have been faced with 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, 14,000, 100,000 years ago, if human beings would have been around in any way, shape, form, or fashion at that time. Okay, so your ID or your idea of an ID is that which keeps you here. Okay, all of that in one thing. So impulsive behavior, instinctual behavior, all of that is the result of backward thinking. Again, not to say a negative thing, but it does take place mostly in up under that limbic system in the reptilian brain, where it's all about instinct to survive. Okay, and then you have the central thinking. So if you can imagine this as a pyramid, all right, we got one cornerstone here, one cornerstone there, and then a capstone here. All right. Now I know that would be technically drawing a triangle, but I think everybody understands that that's still saying pyramidal. Okay, especially when you go to the prism science. So this is the pyramid of the brain. Then, if you can see that. All right, and the pyramid of the brain will have the capstone in the center, and that capstone is what? It is called the super ego. Super ego. And the super ego, the reason why I put central thinking is more of the centered self. But why would I say the centered self? Because when you start thinking super ego, start thinking morality. All right? Morale. Okay? Or morality. Start thinking about things that people pick up on when they say, I have a moral compass, all right, or moral self. You're standing in the center, okay? What is it that is the actual right thing to do in this situation? Now, some people lean too far into central thinking. Okay, why do I say lean too far into central thinking? Because they're only basing their morale off of societal influences. Okay, so the society may tell you it's the right thing to do this. It's the moral thing to do this. What's an example of that? Every 4 years, they'll say it's the right thing to do. It's the moral thing to do, to get up and vote, and don't just leave your community or your world in the hands of chance and things like that. Even though they give you the illusion of choice, even though they provide for you who you're supposed to vote for, even though they put the policies in front of you, even, you know what I'm saying? So people think that they're doing the moral thing, okay? And if you're in the right place in the right time, which would possibly be the wrong place at the wrong time, if people are being chastised publicly, okay, like what happened with Ye, all right, they think it's the moral thing to do to chastise this person, even though you don't understand what they're speaking about. You can't even comprehend it. So why are you attacking this person? This is how you can have entire groups of people at one time stoning a woman, like I saw when I was younger. They stoned a woman to death, buried her up to her neck, and stoned her literally to death. I saw it as a video. Okay. And this was a group of people who thought that they were doing the moral thing because they thought that their moral compass or their laws at that time, all right, that they accepted from old laws and ancient laws, they thought that that was the right thing to do because this woman had committed adultery. Okay, according to their laws. So just because you're saying something is moral doesn't mean that it's objectively moral. Okay, morality is really a subjective concept because not everybody receives the same morale the same way. Okay, there are different morals, different types of morale, different ethnic codes, all kind of things that not everybody would agree with. So you have different groups that practice it in different ways. So that's why I say some people lean too much into the super ego. All right. And they start becoming the self-righteous types of beings where they think everything that they're doing is right, but they could be causing harm to people. They could be hurting. They could be hurting themselves, but it's based off of what society told them was right or something that they made up in their mind. It doesn't always have to just be societal influences. It could be environmental influences like your household or your upbringing or culture associated with or a small group or a team of your pastor, whatever. And you just accepted this as this is what is the right thing to do. Okay. So again, that's a subjective mode that people step into. So you have it. Backward thinking, central thinking, forward thinking. This is the brain. All right. And this would be that activation of the ego in totality, as far as what Sigmund Freud was speaking of. And once you understand all of that, okay, then the purpose of the ego, especially the ego of the forward thinker, is to help you steer. Okay, so the ego would be like the steering wheel. How they described it, or Sigmund Freud described it, would have been the ego is like the horseman that's riding on a horse. Okay, the ego is the horseman. This is you, all right, or the cowboy. And then the horse itself would be the id. All right, those were the two main pieces that they discuss. All right, so the horseman is the ego, if you will remember that. And the horse itself is the id. Why? Because again, the id is not to be demonized. All right. You have a lot of things that you have to do in reality to survive. You have to breathe. You have to eat. Okay. Certain things you have to be able to do. And then you have to figure out what is the relationship between these two, that ego that allows for you to function as the godly self, as it's called, and the ego that allows you to function as the lower self, as it's called. And both of these work as a system. You understand? I'm explaining to you. So if one gets off, then the direction is shifted. The horse is going to go wherever it goes, and you'll be wherever you are. And if the horse runs away and it gets away from you, the direction is shifted because you fall off of the horse. Christopher Reeve style. You know what I'm saying? You know how that ends up. So the point is, people would need to learn if they want to better steer their ego, okay, and be in control of that ego. You want to sit on top of the ego that is the id, all right, and allow for the ego version of yourself, which is the forward thinking self, to literally say, go forward, all right, or grab the reins. And if you need to pull and what do you call it, right or whatever, and reverse direction and move around, heave, hold, whatever you need to do, whoever you need to call on, so that you're going where you intend to go, then it requires mastery of both. All right. And mastery of both is what everybody's been attempting to do. Sigmund Freud will just be another Buddha. Okay. Now, again, there are different degrees of what Buddha was able to teach and all of that. All right. But still, Sigmund Freud will be similar to a Buddha or a Christ, Jesus, Siddhartha. Okay. All these different people, Tahuti, where they're telling people about the darkness of the self, the light of the self. Okay. The backward thinking, the forward thinking. Dr. Malachi York wrote that song, Wake Up Everybody. And what did he say? He said, no more backward thinking. Time for thinking ahead, because human beings are regressing. That's what he's saying. And if you put it in the holy tablets, that people are regressing. They're going back to Homo erectus. Okay, and you going back to Homo erectus isn't going to serve the generations coming after you, because you have to be stronger and wiser, not just growing taller, like the brother Damian Marley put in that song that he did with Nas called Sabali. All right, meaning patience. Are we growing wiser, or are we just growing tall? Meaning, are you advancing in all these things that you see as the superficial, even though people may not see it as that, all right, or the synthetic self, okay, all the while, many of years, like Dr. Malachi York was teaching, were being lost because you're not calculating how you used to. You're not doing the functions you used to do. You're not growing the food how you used to. You're not getting out in the nature how you used to. Okay, so you may be losing certain aspects of the self that, if they're cultivated, they could allow for evolution. Okay, if your technology continues to evolve without you, all right, it's similar to that. Then eventually this id will switch over. The ego self, which could have been a higher you, falls lower than the id would have been. And the id, which would have been your AI and all these technologies, or the primitive self that says, I want to use this technology to help me survive. Okay, it takes over and it goes beyond you. You see, and then eventually your id that was beneath you will take over all of them, and then they'll be the super ego. They'll tell you what's right, what's wrong, what you can do, what you can't do. You someone explaining to you? You ever seen the movies where the robot or the AI is telling the human, no, you cannot do that because you haven't had a nap. You need a nap. Now you are tired. Like, I'm not. I can keep going. I don't get tired. Yes, you do. Here go your vital readings right now. You see what I'm explaining to you? So it's very important for human beings to remember these types of sciences and know what it means to actually steer. Okay, so the ego, simply, all right, that ego, that forward thinker, okay, is the one that helps you steer. Okay, steer, steer, steer. Remember that. Help you make the decisions to turn left, turn right. Okay, the super ego is like that, if you want to call it the seat belt. Okay, this is similar to a seat belt. All right, or the seat itself. Okay, the central seat. Okay, and then the vehicle, the car that you're driving, all right, that's the id. You understand that? Okay, so again, if we kill this, then this will be similar to a brain death. All right, so this wouldn't be the ego we would kill. Everybody say you got to kill the ego death, ego death. Everybody's screaming this. Do they understand what they're saying? Because if you kill each and every aspect that we just went over quickly, all right, what will be left of what you're calling the self? What will be left? So if we shut this down, where will be your decision making? If we shut this down, what will be your instinct to survive? If we shut this down, what will be your moral compass? So this doesn't seem like, now people can make their own decisions on how they want to receive what I'm saying. This doesn't seem like we need to kill or something we need to get rid of. Okay, so I don't know if this guy must die, but we'll see. All right, so we got that. Now, look, last time we got on here for a while, we had issue with the sound. Y'all let me know, because I know we did the microphone, we had no problems. How's the sound coming through? Are they chopping it up? What's going on? Because it could be a situation when I switch mics from the way that I'm holding the camera. How's the sound coming through? Y'all let me know. All right? So we're going to get into some more versions of what people think the ego is and what's associated with it. All right, sound good? Okay, cool, cool. Thank you. So let's talk a little more about that reptilian brain type self. Let's talk a little more about that base self or that primal or primitive self. Let's talk a little more about that id. All right. A lot of people walking around with the id factor. They think they got the it factor. Okay, remember, id is what? Id is it. All right, but it's really a primitive response. Okay, and everybody wants to be popular. Everybody wants to be liked. Okay, because they think it helps them to survive. All right, nobody doesn't want to be like when people go out and they get a big chain. That's a status symbol for survival. They think people are going to like them, which will help them get their business endorsements and things like that. And maybe they'll help them mate and reproduce. Most things all lead to reproduction if you don't understand that. Even people that don't want to have children, they still do things that are in alignment with reproduction. They still have sex. They just put on a condom. They still have sex. They just use contraception. Okay, they still have sex. They just use birth control. They still have sex, but they do spermicide. They still have sex, but they get neutered. They have sex, and they tubes time, but it's all still about reproduction. You're just trying to convince yourself that it's not that. The act of sex is literally a scientific thing. Sex is speaking in terms of gender for a reason. You're here to reproduce, okay? Meaning you have the ability to reproduce. That's what sex is for. Human beings, not exclusively human beings, because all of these different living organisms have to sexually reproduce in some type of way, whether it's asexual, homosexual, heterosexual. Would it really be heterosexual, asexual, or heterosexual reproduction? You see what I'm explaining to you? So that word sex is saying gender. And when you're having sex, you're saying you want to reproduce. So when people go to the club and they put on all that cologne and perfume and the dresses and the pants and the tights and the skirts and all that, they get into this one little room and there's music and people are looking under that. Somebody is about to be born. And human beings don't understand that. So the club is like the foreshadow of more humans are on the way. Why? Because people get them drinks in their system, they intoxicate themselves. Some people don't, listen, they have to get confidence. They take confidence juice, as they call it, or ego juice, and they drink it, and then they feel more confident, even though it's not real confidence, it's an illusionary, synthetic confidence, and then eventually they reproduce with somebody, and somebody's gonna be, every time somebody goes to the club, people come back to their house, they go, somebody has sex, and then somebody's on the way. You see what I'm explaining to you? So a club is just a foreshadow of more humans. You know what I mean? That's something for you to think about. Okay, so if you don't like human beings, I know you don't like clubs. As soon as you see the music, like, man, damn. You see what I'm saying? As soon as you see the line outside, you just know that that's just more probability. You know what I'm saying? That's just more chance. God damn. You see what I'm saying? But that's the point. So most people are, listen, all the things you see people doing is all about survival. How they dress, okay, why they want to be liked, the car they drive, the house, whether they got a good credit, bad credit, the languages. It's all about survival and reproduction. That's the most primitive stuff. So it's that it factor. The id, they want to be it. Everybody wants to be seen as that because it helps them survive as they're here as human beings. Okay, more of that it factor. They think less people want to get at you. Even still, that's counterintuitive because when you become more of that it factor, more of the animals or the humans want to attack you because of that, because they start being threatened by you. So the same protection you would attempt to build to protect the id, okay, ultimately winds up being a lot of people's downfall because that id gets attacked by all these other beings who don't think that they have the id factor, but they will be acting off of their id factor alone because it's that same id factor that wants to be it. So there's that tag you're it mentality. So let's talk about it. Everybody feels as though they have an ID. Okay, police pull you up and say, what's your ID? Your ID has your name on it, your title on it, where you think you live, all the domicile stuff, residency, all this stuff. Okay, so people have ID. What's ID supposed to be short for? Okay, ID is supposed to be short for identity. Okay, or identity documentation. All right, so simply identity. Identity. When we say this word identity, doesn't it sound like this? Entity. We talked about the eyed one, right? When you eyed entity, you think you're seeing something and there's an illusion of self. Okay. What about this odd entity? Odd would be saying it's not balanced. Okay. So this would be the central thing here. And this was the seesaw. All right, or the things that you see or think that you saw, the seesaw, the split in the middle that we talked about that got some people upset because they didn't know nothing about it, so they went to research and they found out I was telling the truth that the seesawian section, all this stuff. Remember those days? Okay, that was fun. So the seesaw, this would be off balance. You see what I'm explaining to you? It would need to even out. So how do you even out this equation right here, or how do you even out this occurrence, all right, or this position of the seesaw? First, you have to look at the fact that it's odd, and you have to understand the odd part. Why would it be odd? Let's look at the etymology. First, we got to break it down. So we say id, okay? You see how it's identical. I'm not saying that as a pun, all right? Identity, id is right there. Identity, okay? We got to know what this id means. Other than just the it, you got that, okay, or the S in German, okay? But let's break it down into two words. So we got identity, id, entity, okay? And the id entity, if we were speaking about the id as the reptilian self, then that would be a reptilian or the human being that's regressing. So the id entity or the id entity will be the self that's leaning more so up under the limbic into the reptilian brain, into the I gotta survive, I gotta, identity, I. You understand? So identity, the etymology brings you to this word here, item. Now, the same way you see id as it, what word can you make out of this word right here? Item. I mean, is it really that hard? The word would be item. Say, Faith, you didn't even say nothing different. No, you didn't say nothing different. They didn't say nothing different. A lot of these meanings of what's being hidden and spoken about is in the words themselves. Okay? So go look it up. You'll see identity leads you to item. Okay? So item was a word that meant the same. Showing you how to balance this out. Okay? Item meant the same. Okay, what do you think item meant? Item was a word that meant in the same manner. Okay, it's like saying also. Okay, or all so. Everything, all is so. Okay, to so is to say it is. Okay, so in the same manner. So if I say item, I'm saying the same manner. But what's the meaning of the word item? Item is a thing. Okay, which will be what? Something. And Dr. Melakazi York explained it as what? Sum of things, or what we think in our things, a sum of that. Okay, something is added up. You see, I'm explaining to you. So item, they seem to be the same. They seem to be speaking of the same thing in comparison, literally. All right. So then same, also sameness was saying that these things, and where would you get sameness from? You'll get that from identitas, okay, or identitas. And that meant sameness. So you got identity, identitas, item, okay, whatever. All of it saying this is one. All right. It or that one. Another way to say item is to say that one. So if you say, I am this or I am that one, you're saying I'm an item. And an item would be the thing. And all things are things. Even when you say person, okay, place and thing, okay, each one of these three components are what? Something. Okay, they are something. So even what you think is a noun, all right, is essentially just what people say, a thing. But they'll break it down and say, oh, it's person, place, and thing. All of those are things. You're just attempting to separate it. So noun or nun, see that phonetically? Noun, nun, or nu, all things are part of that nu, which is that thing which became all things, new thing or no thing. So even when you're saying no thing, if you put that period right there, no thing, a number of a thing, you can't quantify it, you can't calculate it, so you just think that it's not there. That's zero. And what is zero? The singularity, the dot. And the dot is a thing. So everything came from that thing, whether you're speaking in terms of creation stories, whether you're speaking in terms of Big Bang Theory, everything came from that thing, so everything still is connected to that thing. Okay, there's a theory of everything. Literally, go look it up. TEO, theory of everything, theory of oneness, interconnectedness. Okay, so when you're speaking in terms of even the identity that people think they have, it's still pointing to oneness. It's still saying that things are all connected. That's why I told you I go look at the word individual, the etymology of that, individual. All right there in the word individual, okay, you have divid, okay, as in a dividend, divided, something that's supposed to be separated. But if you go look at the etymology, it'll bring you to individualis. Individualis. And individualis meant all together. Okay, like the Quran spoke about. Hold on to that rope. Hold fast to the rope all together and don't be what? Literally, go look it up in the book of the Quran, Surah Al Quran, Surah 3, Ayah 103. Okay, hold on to the rope all together. Hold fast to the rope all together, and don't be divided. All right. So that word is saying, don't be divided. When you say individualities, it's almost like you're echoing that scripture. You see what I'm explaining to you, or kitab? So my point here is, it's still all together. That means if you were to think of Nun or the primordial waters as a feminine aspect, then everything you're looking for will all be to get her, and her would be Nu, all right, or Nun. Just like how them nuns are the women who wait and save themselves. It's a feminine thing. The nuns, all right, it's like getting back to the Salem, all right, Musalem, those who are of the peace or the place of security. You see how you get that? So once you get beyond all of what the odd part is, or how don't you think that's odd that the individual word actually means all together, or sameness, or oneness? You see what I'm explaining to you? So if you're saying one is as an individual, one is as an item, or one is I am that one item, Edom, okay? Edom, Adam. You go back to Adam. I just thought of that. You can do Adam if you want to. Say everything came from Adam. Everything came from atom. All right. And atom meant what? You can't cut it any further. All right. Atomos. Okay. Meaning the atom is the most you're going to get to figuring out. Go look it up, though, so y'all don't think I'm just saying it. It just means uncut. All right. What does uncut mean? Undivided. You see? All of this is phonetics. So go ahead and take it. And it's real, though. It's not just phonetics, because all of these words still link up. So if you want to take a screenshot, I don't know if y'all can see it. I don't know if something is blocking it. Okay, that should be clear. Okay, cool. You see? So the idea itself, or the identity itself, has to be balanced out. There needs to be an understanding of oneness. All right, there needs to be an understanding of what they call teotus, okay, or tautus, or that which is. All right, when they ask, yo, who is the God I'm supposed to be telling these people sent me? I am that I am. I am, okay, item, ego, ego. I am, I myself, ego, am that ego. That is also ego, theotus. Okay, tautus. Go look it up, tautus. That. I think Dr. Malachi York taught that when you say of that, you're saying the ego. I have to go look that up and fact check myself, so y'all fact check me too. But I was looking for it earlier today. I know he said of that, because I thought about that. I said, that's all that. Okay, so niggas think they saying, oh, you think you all that. A lot of that is speaking about somebody's self-esteem or self-worth, okay, which translates to ego, okay, or interprets as ego. So a that, or theotus, or tautus, okay, and tautos is that word that, all right, or that, or thought, okay, you get thought, all right. Matter of fact, let's switch it over because it run out of space. All right, let's look at that. Let's look at this word that. We talked about id or it. Let's speak about that, and let's speak on this I am that I am, okay? So we have this statement, I am that I am. I am that I am. People out here repeating that. That came from the Bible, if you didn't know. Okay, that was speaking of Elion. And Elion was speaking about the God of the Israelites, also saying the one that was the highest or the most high, that God. Okay, the one. All right, the one would have been what? Theos, or the uni God, or the monad, as some people say, or monos. All right, that would have been the God, or Allah, as opposed to Ella. All right, Elo. All right, al ilo, or al ilo, the Allah, or the Ilah, which would have been the God if you were referring to it as something. This is the God that we're speaking of, al Ilah. All right, but it's Allah to say no one is supposed to be partnered with Allah. So if no one was partnered with Allah, all right, then that is al Ilah. All right, al Ilah, the God, el Ilo. All right, el Ilo. He is the God. Why do I say he? He gives you huwa. Huwa. Go look that up. And if I say the word huwa, you go and look up the Proto-Germanic form of who, or you can look up the Old English form of who, and see if you don't get huwa. And go make me a truth teller come back and say you're the one. All right? So if I say huwa, all right, huwa, in Arabic, I'm saying he. But I'm not saying he as the English speakers use it, or the English language asserts it, okay? He was saying something that was divine, all right, or abstract, something that they don't really understand what it is. So Hua still brought you back around to who, because they don't know who it is. All right. And even when you say Hua as he, okay, or who as in who from the ancient Egyptian force, all right, of utterance, and then you put the word wa there, okay, you're saying the utterance and. Okay, whatever the utterance became, you say in the beginning was the word became flesh, all of that. If the utterance became flesh, all right, then that would have meant whoever. Okay, who? And then you put the word and. All right. So you, as the being, whoever, you or them or they, whatever pronoun or nun, all right, will be spoken of, that which came out of nun. All right. You and whatever. And what will be whatever? Everything. You and all. Okay. So I and I. I would be all. Okay. And I would be self, or the idea of self. So I and all in all. So what they say, all in all, or out of many, one, or out of one, many, okay, however you want to flip it. Okay, e pluribus unum, all right, unum anum, all right, unum, anun, atum, however you want to say it. E pluribus amun, okay, that which is hidden, all right. All of that was speaking about all together. So Hua was a force that people don't understand about. It's a oneness, al illah, all right, Allah, all right. And Allah Ta'ala or Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala was not partnered with anything, meaning that which couldn't be compassed wasn't understood about. That's like saying none. You see what I'm explaining to you? So most people get stuck there because they think that all these, you say Illah, you say Allah, it's supposed to be the same thing. No, Allah was another word. It didn't just mean God. Illah was like saying God. Okay? It's like, okay, let me write it out like this. If you say Illah, that's like saying lowercase God. Even though we know better. We gotta Allah would be like saying the God that's supposed to be that one creator. All right. Still, that's not the actual translation, according to what Dr. Melchizedek York was teaching. All right. So the point there is that you would be speaking about would be like all of these other concepts or ideas of the inseparable, the interconnectedness, that which is one. Okay, so I am that I am. So then there must be other I ams if we're speaking in terms of the I am or the ego. So then there are other selves or beings or that which is referred to as a nefs. Okay, so nefset, all right, or nefsim or nefsun. There will be other selves, all right, or beings that would be calling themselves gods. All of you are gods. All of your children of that I am, Elion. All right, Elion would give you what? Elion or Elion or Elion, which translate to highest, all right, or the most high. So they say all of you are children of the most high. So that's another I am. And that I am would be that I am. Do y'all get the point there? It would be the. That is like saying the in some senses. So you'll say, I am the I am, or I am that I am. You with me? So then let's speak about that. Who would the that be? And for you, that is a thought. Okay? If I was speaking in ancient languages or olden languages, okay, where you see people say, thou art this, like you are, but they say, thou art this. Okay, thou is saying you. Thee, all right, as in thee two E's, is also saying you. Thy is also like saying you or your, all right? So you got you or your or you, okay? You see how all of these are lining up? So you got that, you got thought, you got thou, you got thee, you got thy, all right? All of it is pointing to an assertion of there being a self, which we have to get to. And in order for there to be a self, there has to be the thought of the self, which means there has to be that which allows for the thought of the self, which is the brain, all right, or the psyche, okay? So the psyche is psyching human beings into thinking that there is such thing as a self. So you got people walking around saying things like what? I am in touch with myself. All right. You want to know the truth about that? The truth is you could never truly be in touch with anything, not just yourself, with anything. You're not in touch with anything because the idea of oneness is supported by what people are calling that empty space or the ether, anything like that. But if you look at it, when people are saying, I have this tactile experience, or I have this experience where something touched me, or if I sit here and I touch this piece of paper, or you walk over, they say, the pastor say, touch your neighbor and say this, you never touch anything, okay? There's only the perception of touch. But why is there a perception of touch? It lies in or tells the truth in the science of magnets. Okay? So let's look at it like this. If I put two magnets together, like when we were younger, all right, let's say we put two magnets together, and one of them has, one side is the north, one side is the south. Okay? And if I'm facing them this way, what will happen? Are these going to attract or are they going to repel? So you have what's called the law of attraction and the law of repulsion. The actual law of attraction, the actual law of repulsion is rooted in the fundamental science of magnetism. Okay, which we got to go magnetism. Then we have to speak about electromagnetism when we're speaking about touching. Okay, so we're speaking in terms of electromagnetic repulsion. Okay, because that's what it is. People think they're feeling something. It's actually electromagnetic repulsion. Okay, then that means that the same way people say opposites attract, all right, opposites attract, then the things that are identical, look at the word, would push away. All right. So that's what would happen in this situation. They wouldn't attract, they would push away. So then we need to look at what the atom, what we just spoke about, or the primitive, well, not the primitive, the primary item would be of reality. They call it the building block. Now we know more about the building blocks and the subatomic particles and all of that and the quarks and things like, according to what they're saying now. All right. But essentially they were saying that the atom itself was that, like that essential part of existence. That was the essentia. Okay. So you have an atom and you have the protons and the neutrons. And then you have what's referred to as the electrons. Now, the electrons are what? Negatively charged. Okay, now I know normally you would have the negatively charged on the south part, but I'm just doing this for just the visual itself. So look at the N as negative, right? So let's say this will be the north, all right? The two norths coming together, they push away. So imagine N for this situation here as the atom as negatively charged electrons. Okay, they have a negative charge. So if two negatively charged electrons were to come in contact with one another as a part of the systems they were a part of, meaning if you have your finger, let's say this is the finger, okay, like E.T. Let's say this is the hand and this is the finger and there's light coming from it, you're E.T. All right? So you got your head. I don't know how else to do it. Okay, let's draw the man. He's pointing. Okay? So you have a finger and let's say that there's an object here, a box. Okay? The box itself is composed of what? Atoms. And the man himself is composed of what? Atoms. Okay, so then let's look at these pieces around here as electrons, and let's look at these pieces around here as electrons. All right, these electrons are negatively charged. These electrons are negatively charged, so what's going to happen? They're going to actually repel. All right, or repel, excuse me. Then that would be electromagnetic repulsion. So you're not touching anything. Your brain is saying, when I do this, my brain says, I acknowledge the quantum level interaction. You're not observing quantum level interaction as a human being, not consciously, but there is a subconscious system within yourself that understands it, and that's the nervous system. So it tells you this is a barrier, and that barrier is only because this type of matter is packed to a certain degree. That's why you have different states of matter where you touch things and they matter to a certain degree based on your observation. So water will matter a certain way. Okay, gases will matter a certain way. This desk matters a certain way. And if I touch the stove, that heat energy transfer as energy and matter are interconvertible also matters to me a certain way. And I have systems in my body installed that tells me this is hot. As a matter of fact, this interaction is charged so that it's going to cause for harm in your system. You see what I'm explaining to you? But I never touched the stove. There was just an imbalance that occurred because of the activity of the stove itself. This is what's explained through quantum physics and quantum mechanics, specifically quantum physics. Okay, once you understand the physics, you got to go quantum. So human beings don't touch anything. So not only do you not touch anything, I pick up this glass of water and I drink. I don't touch the glass of water. The water doesn't even, all of these are systems that work with one another. The atoms, electrons, protons, neutrons included. Okay, and when there are new systems formed, that's just saying that there's a new system formed. When you touch somebody, even in the act of sexual activity, and a child is created, nothing ever happened. You see what I'm explaining? So when motherfuckers say, yo, he hit me, and then niggas say, I ain't even touch him, they're telling the truth regardless. That's a dangerous science. You know what I'm saying? Technically, listen, you can imagine science going into the court. That's why they try to separate the church and the state, because they realized that the church was full of the priests, and the priests were what you call scientists today. You see what I'm saying? Those were the chemists. They ain't bringing that shit in because science is logic. Okay, when you get down to the bottom of it, truthfully, you say, yo, you can't beat somebody. What does it mean to beat them? It means you punched them. What does it mean to punch them? It means you touched them. Nope, nope, nope. See, I was waiting on you to say that. According to my files here, it says I cannot touch anybody. Da 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 da. Well, electromagnetic repulsion. So then I'm gonna put that paper in it. We gotta let them. You see, they'll never integrate science, actual science, into the court because it'll overthrow everything that they think is reality. Even though they know, actually, a lot of them know better. They know evidence ain't real evidence. They just say it's evidence, but nigga, you wasn't even there. If I'm about to be judged off of this evidence, why the fuck are you there? You see what I'm saying? I'm the judge. Well, you didn't. Are you a forensic scientist? No. Why are you here? If they're gonna say that that's what's gonna convict me, why the fuck? Why do you need to be here? Let's just, you know what I'm saying? But they know it's all fake. All of this stuff is an illusion when you look at it. You see? So let people know that. You know, you never touch anything, so you can't be in touch with yourself. That's an illusion. Nothing's touching. Atoms are interacting. So that same oneness is only there, or that interconnectedness is only there because those systems are bound by the empty space that they call an ether. Some people call it ether. Some people call it empty space. Some people call it the fundamental space, whatever you want to say it is. All right, or quantum space or the quantum field. Whatever you want to call it, all of these atoms have to exist within it. You see? So even that's what Dr. Melikazi York was teaching. When you speak of nothingness, in order for nothing to be there, or in order for things to come into existence, then the conditions for things to come into existence had to exist. So the conditions for things must have been what you call a no thing, which is a thing. Nothing is a thing. If anything, nothing is a word. If no thing, nothing is a word. You see, I'm explaining to you. So be back to get beyond that. So what you're speaking in terms of is called nefs. All right? People want to get in touch with self. Nefs. All right? Or nefis. Nefis is self. Or the idea of self. When you get to a higher degree, you start realizing, no, first of all, this man just explained to me nothing's touching. You don't have to believe me. Go look into what I taught. All right? Nothing actually touches. So then I'm not even, my atoms are not touching. All right? There's an illusion of a connection. Okay? The true connection is that there is no connection. That's what makes everything connection. You understand? Because they're bound by that law of connectivity, which is not connectivity. I know it gets deeper and deeper and deeper. So you think that there's a self is because you have a brain. And it's your consciousness that allows you to think that way. You understand? So you have to get beyond the self. So the self would be what you call your own or one's own, let's say it that way, one's own person. All right, so this is my person. I am this, I am that, I am tall, I am this. As soon as you start saying I am, okay, you are by contract signing up to agree to an illusion. Okay, so what are you? I am black. That's an illusion. But you sign up for it every time you utter it. I am this. I am that. I am that I am. I am new to this school. I am an old person. You understand? I am tired. I am. So am is a way of you saying that there's a current state. And the state that you're speaking about is something that is an elusive state to you. Because truly, if you would say, I am tired, if I ask you what state is tired, you're going to speak to me about a feeling. Okay, but it's not just the feeling. You have to have that which causes the feeling too. So what is the current state of everything that you're calling you? You see what I'm explaining to you? So you have to get beyond the mental illusion to actually master self. No human being has done that. You see, they just accept the illusion, say, I am this, I am that. The moment you start speaking and you put that there, under that I am there, then you're speaking of a state. And you haven't gotten beyond that state because you have to explain all of the different parts of that state. So where are all of your atoms right now as you are tired? Okay, explain to me all of the types of chemical releases that are occurring in your brain. And then the moment that you try, you wouldn't have time enough to explain all of it. By the next moment, that's not the same state, which is why you're always traversing states. So you're not anything at one time, ever. Okay, you were all things that are a part of what you're really attempting to speak about, which is what? Your energetic composition. And not just your energetic composition, meaning that which is moving around as matter, all right, or that inner convertible state of matter energy, which is allowing you to be this system that you are. Not just your energetic composition, your biological composition. And what else? You have your energetic composition. You have your biological composition. Oh, listen, these are the things that people are truly attempting to speak about. And if you want to say it, you could have your existential. All right, all things that are there around you to allow for you to exist. So it actually extends beyond you, because breath is a part of you, but that's not something that is occurring internally. That's something that's coming from outside of you. All right, the air is what you're really speaking about. Okay, which is a mixture of substances coming into you, and then every part of your life, since the moment that you breathe in and your lungs became functionable, you were also composed of things that are outside of you frequently. You see, and you have to have things that are outside of you coming in and out of your body, or you will perish. The state that you have now will shift, and then it will decompose and go back. So if somebody were to hold their breath, all right, if they hold their breath until they're what they call out of breath, all right, or they would only breathe in carbon dioxide and they would limited oxygen, like you've seen people suffer in real time, okay, then they would no longer have the composition that allows for them to exist. They need that to be a part of their composition. So you have 3 composition levels that allow for you to exist here. All right, your energetic composition, your biological composition, and your existential composition, which is all of this is that system. If I ask you about either of these at any given time, you won't be able to explain it to me. So you'll never know yourself. That's just an illusion that you accepted. So I am is an illusion, speaking in terms of state, but you traverse states every nanosecond, okay? And it's an unknown second. They call it a second, but it's really a first, because that would have been the first measurement of time. This is what Dr. Melikazi York, the most honorable Dr. Melikazi York, taught. Okay, so firstly, you don't even know. So every moment, okay, let's use that word mom. All right, moment. Every most basic part of yourself, every moment, most basic part of the space-time continuum that you occupy, all right, that's a tie to that which you call yourself. Every moment that passes, you're a different being. You see? So have you ever been one thing? No, you've never been one thing, unless you're speaking of a system. And even still, that system breaks up into like 3 components. And I'm sure you could develop it further if you wanted to. But these are the essential components, all right, or the elementary components of that which make you a quote unquote system called a thing or a person. So one's own person is an illusion. Okay? This is speaking in terms of a system that is comprised of many systems. You see? So, I mean, every degree you add on it, you start realizing, then what am I? Exactly. Alice in the Wonderland. Who are you? What do you mean you? You? Who are you? All right. And if you are who, then who are you and what? Who and what are you? Because if I put 2 people next to one another, okay, and they say, we are an item. All right. You know, people that say they're in a relationship, right? They say, we are an item. That's not true. Okay. Unless you're saying the word item as in that one or oneness, meaning you are connected by all things space-time. Okay. But even still, the energetic configuration would be the only separating factor. And that separating factor isn't truly a separating factor, because there's still an interconnected reality associated with those 2 pieces. Okay. So half is whole. All right, let me give you an example of that. Okay, let's say we got a candy bar. All right, and I split this candy bar to share with somebody. Okay, and have one piece, okay, over here to give to somebody else. All right, so this person, they say, I have half. Look at the English language doing the English language thing. What do you have? I have half. You what? You have half. You have what? Yeah. I have. You have have. You have had. Have you ever had anything? Have you? I'm talking about what you had. I'm saying what you have. Are you saying have? Are you doubling down on have? Are you saying you really have it? No, I'm saying I have. Oh, you have it. How you gonna have some shit? You see, English doing the English thing. So let's say this person I have. This person I have. And you look at it, the person that has sense, yeah, you have sense, not have sense, Jesus. Okay, the person that has sense say, no, you don't. No, yes, I do. What do you mean you have have? You have a whole. No, it's not a. They gonna look at you. They gonna say, wait a damn minute. I say, see what I'm saying? You see, it's all fake. They lie to us, nigga. So no, I have, because it used to be a part of a whole. If it's a part of a whole, it can't be half, huh? But that's what a fraction is. Fraction is just saying a piece of something that's still supposed to be there. Then that's still whole. Even still, if you separate it from what you're calling whole, it's still a part of that whole. And guess what? This is whole too. So you don't have half, you have a whole. Or you can say you have a whole half. Or you say half whole. But even still, you have to take into consideration what is wholly there. In your hand, you're holding whole thing. That's the whole half, right? And niggas gonna be looking at you like you crazy. I'm not crazy. You see? So all of this item situation, all of the separation, and we become one and cling on all this other stuff, it's a reality, but you have to understand what part of the reality you're standing on to observe it as such. Okay? So there's no such thing as half. If you're holding something, that's the whole. It don't even matter if you're holding it or not. Okay, there's a such thing, at least what they're saying, there's a such thing as objective reality. Okay, whether or not you're observing it, just because you didn't watch the football game because you went to sleep on it, doesn't mean it didn't happen. Okay, you just didn't observe it, so it's not accounted in your standpoint. Okay, or accounted for, or counted, or added up. You see? So their math ain't mathing. Half is whole. And whole is half. What do you mean whole? Yeah, because whole, if anything, if I have a whole candy bar, all right, then I also have the absence of the candy bar. Okay? So if I have the candy bar, let's say candy bar possession equals check. If I have the candy bar possession equals check, then I also have not the candy bar. Okay? Meaning not the candy bar. So I don't not have the candy bar. I have the candy bar. You see what I'm explaining to you? So if I have a candy bar, I also have the absence of the candy bar as a probability. And that has to be taken into account because there was what do you call it, an outcome in reality where I could have not had the candy bar, which means I could have not had the candy bar if I flipped that reality. So having the candy bar also equals not having the candy bar. It just depends on where I would be standing. So that would have been based on what I did. That's where you get into probability and chance. What are the chances of me picking up that candy bar to say that I possess it? Now, let's talk about possession. Possession would also be an illusion, wouldn't it be? Because I'm not even touching this candy bar. I think I'm touching the candy bar. I'm not even eating the candy bar. My body and its system is lying to me. Why does my body want to lie to me? Y'all ever ask yourself that? Why does the body lie to you? When I look at something, I see electrical impulses, but I don't see electrical impulses. You get what I'm explaining to you? I just explained it. I see electrical impulses, but I don't see electrical impulses. There go the pen. Now, what do the electrical impulses look like? You don't know. That's not what you're looking at. What you're looking at is what? The pen or the reflection of light that's coming out on your screen. All right, you're not even looking at the pen. There's so many illusions. So you never possessed anything ever. Okay, you never had anything or held anything in your possession. This is an illusion because the possession would have meant that you could grab it fully, and you cannot grab anything. You see what I'm explaining to you? It's a system that's attempting to explain what you're experiencing. So then somebody's nervous system could have a glitch or a mutation and feel something totally different, and that happens. Okay, you have some people who have more advanced pain receptors than others. You have somebody that might sustain an injury and they're not able to feel pain. They go numb. You have some people who may be mentally numb, as you call it, which all of this is mental. But some people have mental numbing traumatic experiences or mentally numbing traumatic experiences, which cause for them to be, what do you call it, desensitized. Look at the word sense. in there, speaking in terms of the nervous system. So possession is fake. My point here is the ego that they telling people to kill doesn't even actually exist. Okay, and if you want to speak in terms of, let's say, okay, you say Samuel L. Jackson in the movie, say, want to play games, motherfucker? All right, I'll play. If you want to entertain the idea of an actual substantiated ego, it still is based on the brain itself. We should not kill the brain. I don't think we should, because brain death would defeat the purpose of an ascension process. So if you're using the word ego as in that which is being confident and things like that, even that shouldn't be killed. You need confidence or profidence. You need the ability to assert oneself. All right. They say too much of anything could cause for negative outcomes. You saw me explain it to you? So then you don't need too much ego or too much confidence. You don't want to be overly confident. However, you can be. Maybe you being overly confident would allow for you to what they call overachieve. And overachievement will only be a problem for who? Underachievers. That's where the ego gets hurt. All right? Because people say, I thought I was achieved. So the ego in that regard would be something that lied to you, and that self-esteem wasn't steamy as you thought it was. You say hot stuff. Yeah, you self-esteem. Hot stuff ain't really as hot as they thought it was when they started. And then what happens also is when you start placing your ego onto the puzzle piece of somebody else, it doesn't even match. So then it comes back void. And you're basically telling yourself to be that other person, but you can't be that other person. You can't even really be yourself. When people say, yo, just what? Just be yourself. Right? First of all, let's deal with two illusions that are fighting for reality. It depends on how you accept it or see it. You can only be yourself. There is no thing else you can be other than your energetic composition, your biological composition, your existential composition. You can't trade that. And even if you call yourself trading it, whatever you would think that self would be trading would still be a part of the self. However, that self is still selfless because every moment the self changes. All of this changes. So the self that you're saying you have to be, all right, or your own self or your own person, it's going to change. So you can only be yourself, but you can't be yourself because self doesn't actually exist. Self is a system. And that system is ever changing from the moment of conception, even before the moment of conception, from the sperm cell and the egg, which were aspects of the self. 23 chromosomes became 46. So before you even became a matter of conception, all right, you were still a concept. It just was a half concept. It was a half concept, which was a whole concept called an egg. This was half of the candy bar. I don't mean to call children candy bars. I don't know how that's gonna. I don't. You know what I'm saying? Restart. just forget it before people start saying, "Oh, reptilian told you." See, they used the fetus to make the candy bars, and he was talking about it. Listen. The point is, you got half, nigga. You got half, then you got whole. So a whole of that is half. So half a whole. If you got half a whole, then you have a whole. So whole, you got half. So whole, you can have that. I don't know what y'all thought that was finna do. Shit. Questions, goddammit. Any questions? Ego, ego, ego. The sense of self. Sense of self-importance. Nefs. Self-awareness. Awareness of your apparent self. You got to put that there. Apparently, I have an energetic composition. Apparently, it don't matter what, you can't grasp it. You see, what are the questions, y'all? What do we got to do? Any questions? Hey, that was a great class. So you can feel it. Who is this person? He still hasn't stopped teaching. I don't plan to. What we got? You can't hide from yourself. Shit, listen. Dr. Melakazi York, you can't hide. Doesn't matter where you go. Doesn't matter what you do. You can't run away from that feeling deep inside of you. What else we got? Tawa and two or Tawa. What do you say? Tawa Wawa. So is the brain always changing? Yes, everything is always changing, shifting. I'm done. My brain is not my brain. The brain is something that you're calling a system. Listen, this is what I'm telling y'all. Go watch that movie Fountain of Youth and see when that nigga finally was able to access everything. Niggas ain't gonna want that shit. Then you're not gonna be able to be human. You see, I missed the whole class. Wise do not miss from. Okay, why do the haters rage? I don't know. I just be removing them from my channel. That's why y'all tell y'all don't have to respond to them. I'll see them because they want to be seen. They're gonna spam. Don't respond to them. They want to be seen, so they're gonna spam. And then when I see they spam, I just remove them for life. You heard about that new planet they found beyond? I ain't heard nothing about it. And even if I did, I don't know nothing about it. So in touch with yourself is the same as in tune with yourself. If not, you cannot be in touch with yourself. Go back and listen to the degree we just went over. There is no being in touch with yourself. It's an idea or a concept that you're entertaining. Okay? Like if I ask you, what does it mean to be in tune with yourself? What does it mean to be in touch with yourself? All you're really trying to say is you're a critical thinker. Most people are trying to say they're critical thinkers or they're a reflective thinker. All right, that they don't just let themselves do things based off of instinct and impulse. Okay, well then that goes back to the backwards thinking of the id, the central thinking of the superego, and the forward thinking of the ego. You see that horseman on top of the horse, the ego conquering and steering and working with the id. Other than that, listen, you won't be able to be in tune with yourself. A self is speaking of everything you. And I just told you the 3 degrees of the energetic composition, the biological composition, and the existential composition of what you're calling yourself. You'll never be able to know that or know those. You can know about it or the idea. Listen to the idea is still right there, id. Idea of that item, which is a thing, okay, or a concept that you're saying itself. You only have an idea of it, but you will never truly understand the fundamental of it, the basics. Even if you say item or atom, look at this, all right? This word idom, all right, meant ground, okay? That which is ground, adama, all right? Adama, okay? So you got idea, item, idom, atom. Atom would be it, phonetically. It, and or aum is that which is the most basic sound of the universe, or vibration of the universe. It's basically saying quantum vibration. Okay, quantum vibration. Autumn, atum, amun, amen, atum, amun. Atum say complete, full. Amun say it is. Hidden also. You see what I'm saying? So it, it. You still won't even be able to know what it is when you go down to the most basic quantum vibration. Om can only be beheld as an idea. You can go up under some water and hear Om. It'll sound like warping. That's Om. Okay? Y'all ever went underwater and you could hear the vibrations? Literally, as soon as you go into the water. Still, you're not hearing or taking into account every single vibration that is in alignment with every single thing. Okay? That means you will have to be able to observe the quantum vibration on a universal scale. Human beings, what? Couldn't even begin to do that. That's why they're building things like the supercomputer to do it for them. What do you call the supercomputer? They called it the quantum. All right? Quant is saying an amount. Quantity. Quantitative data. How much? Okay? Quant. All right? How much of So they call a quantum computer. Can you calculate that which we cannot calculate about reality? All right? Or the superposition, okay, of oneness. or one in this. Okay? That's superposition, by the way, the 0 and the 1, binary code, when it becomes Q, all right, or 1 and 0. You see that? They're trying to calculate that. You want to know what's interesting? Don't that look like Yoni? Yoni? Or universe? Womb. You say the word womb. You keep saying womb, 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 womb. Niggas get mad. They say, damn, everything go back to the womb, 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 womb. Yeah, the womb, womb, and this word own, woman. All right, woman, woman, and on, uni. On is saying a, or one, or an, a womb, or one womb. So what was the one womb? The one womb was the original singularity, black hole, through which all things emerged, in what they call the Big Bang. That's what they called the primordial egg in ancient Egyptian studies and sciences and teachings. The primordial egg. Why would it be called the primordial egg? The prime egg, the first egg, because all things had to come out of that, and there had to be water there for that egg and that light to be cultivated. Everything's speaking of the same thing. So, again, if you're speaking in terms of the self, you have to abandon the reality, or abandon the idea of the exception of, or the accepting of the reality of self. Okay, get rid of that altogether and deal with what? I don't know. Soon as you figure that out, then you're gonna ascend. You don't know. So it is unknown. Everything is actually unknown. That's where you get the sciences of the more you know, the more you realize you don't actually know. You see what I'm saying? That makes you a part of the known, or the knowing. All right? So unknown is un. You put the un right there at the end. All right? It'll still hold that place as something that is a thing. Okay? So let's say a, un, a, known. All right? Or anun. Or nun. Okay? Or I knew. I knew. Why am I saying new? Because nu and nun are interchangeable. Go look it up. That's the primordial waters. Still takes you back to Anu, which is the anagram for Ona. And Ona is Uni, or Uni, which is One, or one. Ane. Ane is like saying I am. Okay? So you say I am what? One. I am one. One with what? One, and you have to put that with there, the connector, with all one, alone. Allah is all alone. All right, una, uni, one, ane, anu. All right, anun, anun, a known, unknown, I don't know. But when you're walking around acting as if you know, then you're living an illusion. You see, I'm explaining it to you. So once you think you got all your degrees, how are you going to sin? You think you know what? Everything. As the elders used to say, okay, since you think you know everything, I'm going to let you go through it, and we'll see what you do. And most of the time, what? We didn't know nothing. Anything, to be exact. Do you understand? All right, my bad, y'all. I'm looking for the questions. A few more questions. We get up out of here. Yeah, don't forget the Omi. All right? Phase do not miss from the music to the teaching. Oh, you got to know that. Okay, cool. All right, let's see. What questions? Questions. Appreciate your wisdom. I'm tapped in. Keep tapping in. Hey, everybody like the video? Thank you for that. Everybody like the video? All of y'all, I don't know where it is on. I don't have it on my screen, but I think you can like it. Everybody just like the video. Guys, see the lights going up? Okay, that makes me happy. I'm going to draw a smiling face, or at least the idea of a smiley face. With the eyebrows up, so it looks more innocent. Okay, I gotta give him a face because that nigga looked like a ghost for a second. I don't know. The more I add to this shit, the more you can't trust this. Why you slouching? God damn. Who you finna fight? I don't know, man. Just I'll try to make it more. But this nigga look more like he finna do some shit he ain't supposed to do. So either way. All right. Yeah, y'all add the like the video. Okay. Make sure y'all copy and paste the link and share it with your people. Like the video, copy, paste the link, share it with your people. If you ain't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe, especially if you're looking for more information. All right, you want to stay on your toes. You want to bring questions you get answers to. That's how we get these classes. I know we're supposed to be doing astral projection. Eventually, we'll get there. All right, which we done did different components of astral projection. All right, so we got a lot of things in between. But I do address these, I do address these things that people are speaking about in these communities. All right, I think it's important for people to speak on it and learn about it. So you know where to go and study. I gave you enough things to look into. All right, we got like 2 more questions. Anybody? And when you go and you see the video is up, y'all go to the comments and y'all can type certain things you want me to talk about. Even if you weren't in here, some of y'all who watching this later, you know, you got some questions, comment it. All right, I'll do my best. I'll get to it. I'll see it. Or go to my Instagram, phase 1, FAISEONE __ FAISEONE _ all right, and go to my comments and ask me certain questions or DM me. Get in touch with me. We'll keep building day by day. Y'all want to do this? We'll do this. Y'all show me. What else? What else? Yeah, bro, ass is squaring up with a smile. That shit. That nigga look like, you remember David the Savage? Remember the original Savage? No, David, no. Remember that nigga was fucking shit up? What the hell was David on? That nigga look like David down there. He reincarnated. Can you speak on I being a 9th letter and how that ties into the 1 through 9 steps? Is the I highest degree? I think that's a good enough question. Not saying good enough, meaning like y'all questions before weren't good. I think that's a question that can turn into a whole degree. Speaking in terms of the I and the 9th letter. All right, so I'll do my best to turn that into a whole teaching. How do you know that you don't know? I mean, it's just my conscious observation. I don't know. You understand? Even if I know, that which I know is only been stored as data. Okay, when people say that's a given, that's because they think they have datum. Data means given. So it's been stored as data that I can remember and pull back, but doesn't even make it true. So I can know something that's, and then it could have been an illusion. So I didn't actually know it. So how much do you know? You can know all the wrong things, okay? You know all the right things about the wrong truth, which isn't the wrong truth. You see how all these oxymorons. So my knowing of my not knowing is still based off my conscious observation. I could be wrong. I could get to the end and realize that I knew, or I knew. I just don't know right now. You see what I'm explaining to you? Well, then a part of my not knowing could be, again, why I'm human to begin with, to experience what it means not to know. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, it's based on my observation that I don't know. What the element be on the period table, if I'm saying it right? What the element be on the period? What the element be? What you mean, what the element be? What is the difference between your etheric body and your astral body? Listen, I don't know. These words are used to describe what we experience. Now that all this info is online, would you think it's pointless to join any type of society? No. You could join societies for the experience. That's based on you. Allah is alone and has no partners. It's supposed to be, but then they do Shahadatan and they add Rasulullah Muhammad right there, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. They add Muhammad with him, peace be upon him. You know what I'm saying? They say Allah is alone. Also, what do you mean also? Also Muhammad, peace be upon him. Why didn't you just say Allah alone? There should be no Shahadatan. There should be no Muhammadism. You know what I'm saying? You don't need none of this stuff. The Kaaba, none of that, the symbols. It should just be Allah, and you seek Allah. All right, one more question. Anybody else? Are we good? Again, that was a great class. Make sure y'all like the video, share the video, and we'll come back. You see us every day. What is this, class number 13? Told y'all we're going every day. I hear you because I was just thinking on this yesterday. Can you explain? You can explain beyond your conscious thought. I don't know if that's a question. So even if you try to create something new, it's still not because the thought process was thought before. I don't know if the thought process was thought before. However, you never create anything. You never create anything. The word create, if people say in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, or bara Elohim, bara is a word that meant to form. So you don't even create ideas or thoughts. You form thoughts through synaptic connections. You understand? You're not creating thoughts. You never created a business idea. Something came together and formed as an idea that was already there. You don't create children. You form them through sexual reproduction. I'm explaining to you? Manifesting that's an illusion. Okay? You can say manifest, but really what you're doing ultimately would be bringing things together. Because you can't truly manifest anything into existence. You can visualize it to the point where you see it and you do all the things necessary to make sure that you're actually seeing it with your eyes as opposed to your mind eye or mind's eye, or creating or forming the image in your mind. Okay? So that's, again, these are different degrees. Listen, here's the beautiful part about it. Dr. Malachi York said this, and I want you to remember this before we get out of here. Matter of fact, we'll end it with this. The most honorable Dr. Malachi York, who was on the way home, said this: if you want to know if they're one of us, see if they teach something new. You see, you want to know who's one of them ones? Watch and see if they teach something new. So I just want to ask y'all this question before we get up out of here. By show of emoji, or you can answer yes, however you want to say it. Has Omari, phase 1, been teaching you new things? Did you come in, think you had this idea of it, and then you learned something new? Is phase 1 just teaching what everybody's teaching? Which would be what? Counterintuitive. What would be the purpose if everybody's teaching it? Is phase 1 teaching what everybody's teaching? Or is phase 1 bringing damn near with everything he's saying? It's new, somebody new. Sometimes you find somebody new. Go look up Dr. York on YouTube, the new album, and listen to it. It's all new. It's new. You see, we talk about psychology, ego, we still speak on it in a new way. We talk about spirituality, everybody think they ready, they come up, new. You understand? Speak on anything, any of these classes, just look for things to be new. You want to know why? Because that spirit is moving through me. That information is moving through me. And that takes time, observation. That's why I'm telling y'all to do this, so it ain't just going to be me. Y'all going to be able to come out. Y'all going to be the master teachers with me. You see what I'm saying? And you know who the master teacher of all that put us on is Dr. Malachi York. And he wanted us to teach. So don't let nobody ever try to guilt trip you because you start breaking things down and it's beyond their understanding and do what they try to do to me to make me feel bad about being able to be this. No, be it. Be able to bring new things. Okay? You know what I'm saying? So you ain't just repeating what he say. Okay? And then try to act like you're going to came up with some stuff. That ain't nuwapu. That ain't woo 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 nuwapu. Woo nuwapu. Woo woo woo. That vibration that you can tap into, that everybody trying to act like they can tap into. Woo, 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 woo. Vibration is speaking of a frequency. Frequency is speaking of a currency. Currency is speaking of a current. Current is speaking about now. It's a word that means now. And now is new, noun, now. What's the thing right now? Noun. Can you deal with the now? Are you a now-abian? You see? You say new-abian, now-abian. Are you a new-abian? Are you in tune with the waters? Change. You know what I'm saying? And I am. And I'm telling you, things are changing. Things are speeding up. And this is what makes it so beautiful, because ain't nobody else going to be able to teach it, because everything they built up they so-called realities on, and they teachings and they brands and everything, they will have to turn away from it. And they're not equipped to be able to do that because they got too much. Ego. That's stopping them from being able to do it. However, I was taught by the master teacher, okay? And I learned from him through observation. Always be ready to change. Always be ready to shift from what they think you are into something totally different. I saw that from him, okay? So Dr. Melakazi York said that if you want to see whether or not they're one of the ones, see if they're going to teach you something new, okay? They say that that guy must die, the ego guy. The ego guy must die, all right? I tell you, in order for them to start speaking in terms of what the ego is, they need to understand what it is, okay? So whatever ego would be the ego that causes you to block wisdom and stops your ascension, oh yeah, that guy must die. Tell him I said it. Hold on, we got to run that back. Jigga, 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 jigga. Hadus I shug. Divine love, peace in the lab is truly wonderful. Whatever ego causes you to block out wisdom and stop your ascension, yeah, that guy must die. Now tell him I said that.